Plugins. We all want the best music plugins for our songs to get the best sound possible on our vocals, our leads, our basses, and whatever. My name is Wildcrow, and today I'm gonna make a list of the best plugins, but I'm gonna divide it in 3 groups. Best plugins in general, best free plugins, and best vocal plugins. And if at the end of the video I didn't mention a plugin that you think it should be here, down below in the comments I'm gonna have 3 comments, and I want you to go and reply with the plugin that you think should be here. So well, let's just start with the best plugins in general. The first one is an EQ. For me, the best one here is the FabFilter Pro Q3. Of course, you can use the stock EQs in your DAW like the Parametric EQ2 in FL Studio, the built-in EQ, or the Logic EQ, but usually those are a bit limited. The FabFilter Pro Q3, for example, has the normal EQ, but also dynamic EQ, mid-side EQ, left-right EQ. You can like freeze the frequency spectrum and touch the peaks of the frequency spectrum and reduce or increase those peaks manually. I mean, it's just so good. And yes, I have an alternative in the free plugins category. Number 2, if we continue with EQs, I recommend you to have a match EQ. And for this, my advice, the best one is the Ozone Match EQ. I usually use it in mastering, and what I do is I take my song, I take the reference song, and I try to match the EQs. What this is gonna do is give me like the color of the reference song, so in the end the frequency balance is a bit better. For example, maybe my song I have too much highs, so when I compare it to reference song, the match EQ is gonna reduce the highs of my song. And you can use this also while mixing. For example, I have stems of my own songs or stems from other songs because I don't let on remix competitions or they have the project online. So when I'm not sure if my leads sound good, I just take some leads that are similar, maybe I compare them, and the match EQ is boosting a bit the highs and reducing a little bit on the mids. So then I take my EQ and I boost the highs and reduce a bit on the mids. Number 3, is super important to know exactly what you're making while you're producing a song. And for this, a must-have plugin for me is SonarWorks. In your room, you're gonna have a lot of reflections. The sound is gonna bounce on the walls, on the ceiling, on the floor, and this is gonna like apply an EQ to your room. It's gonna boost and reduce some frequencies. So SonarWorks, what it's gonna do is analyze the sound in your room and tell you exactly in your sweet spot what boost and reductions you have. So then what it's gonna do is apply an inverted EQ, so in the end it's like you have a flat EQ, so no EQ. And this is super important because this way, when you're making a song, when you hear something, you hear exactly how it sounds. You don't have any boost or reduction in some frequencies because of the reflections in your room. So this is gonna help you to know better what to do in each particular case. So in the end, you're gonna make way better music, but also way faster. So if you want to get it, down below in the description you have the link. You're gonna have the link of all the plugins down below. Click, go, and download them. Number 4, Kickstart 2. For me, is my go-to sidechain plugin. It's so easy to use, and the Kickstart 2 has a lot of new updates that are so good that the first one didn't have, of course. For example, you can move a little bit the wavetable, you can apply the EQ just to some frequencies, or you can have an external sound trigger in the sidechain. But of course, if you want to have a bit more freedom, if you want to have a bit more control on the sidechain, my advice is that you get the volume shaper by Cable guys. They are the same people that made Kickstart. Number 5, L1 limiter by Waves. It's a really simple limiter that I use in all my groups and buses to control the peaks, and this way have a more controlled sound. I try to just cut 3, 4, 5 dBs because if you cut more, you're probably gonna have a bit of distortion and it's gonna sound bad. And this way, as I'm gonna control a little bit the peaks, everything is gonna be a bit more controlled. For me, it's gonna be a bit easier to balance the song and control the volumes, but also then in the mastering, it's gonna be a bit easier to master. Number 6, a delay, and is the Echo Boy. Of course, you can just use the 3T delay 2, 3T delay 3, or the delay of your DAW. I like to use the ping pong delay, and it's easier to use here and it's so good. You can also have rhythmic delays with different rhythms that you can create by yourself, but also has like a filter and saturation part that sounds so good. And number 7, Soothe. This is a must-have plugin for me that I use especially in vocals, but you can use it in anything. Sometimes I even use it in mastering. And what this is gonna do is cut the resonance of a sound, but in a dynamic way. A resonance is a frequency that sounds so loud and is annoying. And sometimes if you cut it, you're gonna lose a lot of warmth, a lot of color, a lot of strength on the sound. But also sometimes happens that resonance is not the whole time there. Maybe if it's a vocal, it's just in some words or in some parts of the vocal. So Soothe solves this because Soothe is gonna reduce when the resonance is there. For me, these are the best plugins for this year, like in general terms. But right now, let's talk about the best free plugins because I know you all want free things. The first one, we started previously with an EQ, so right now we also start with an EQ, and is the best alternative to the FabFilter Pro Q3, and it's the TDR Nova. Again, you can just use the stock EQ of your DAW, but if you want a more advanced EQ, this is a good alternative. Number 2, something to make things wider, and this time is the Vocal Doubler by Isotope. This is gonna be so good to take your vocals and double them, you know, the name says Vocal Doubler, so you double the vocals. Basically what this is gonna do is create like side vocals. Put the vocal in the sides and with a little bit of delay, so this way you create this effect and you create like there are more vocals sounding at the same time. My advice if you want to use this is to take the main vocal, clone it, and in the clone you apply this effect. Now that you have the clone in the sides, apply a bit of EQ to filter it a little bit so it doesn't sound the same as the main vocal. So now you have the main vocal in the center and these side vocals in the sides. But if you want to spread something in the mix to make something wider and it's not a vocal, what you can use is the ozone imager. And you can just put it and make things wider. Number 3, for mastering. When you're mastering a song, you need to know how loud it sounds because you need to be competitive. You need to be as loud as the other people. And to know this, my advice, I use the Julian. The Julian is gonna tell you a lot of things, but what I focus is on the LUFS. The LUFS is a scale that tells you the perceived loudness of a sound or of a song. If a professional song sounds this loud, but your song sounds this loud, then it's not gonna be good. Yeah, of course the DJ can just take your song and boost it while mixing and blah blah blah, but that's not the idea. The idea is that you have the same loudness or even a bit louder than other songs. Number 4, I don't really need to talk about this one, but it's OTT. It just makes everything sound better. The way I use it is I have the mix at 100%, I take the high, mid and low bands and I move them in a way that I like. When I have a color that I like, of course it's gonna sound over compressed, but when I have a color that I like, I reduce the mix. Usually I go on 20-40%, but of course every sound is different, every song is different, and you're gonna need different things. But this way I get the color I like with the OTT, but I don't apply that much so it doesn't sound over compressed and just makes everything like come alive. And number 5, this time we have a reverb. My advice, if you want to have free reverb, just use the reverbs on your DAW. They are so good. The Fruity Reverb 2 is so good in FL Studio. The Logic Reverb is so good, and I guess the Ableton one is also so good. But if you want to have a third-party alternative that is free, you can use the Valhalla Supermassive. It's like the small brother of the Valhalla Vintage Verb. It sounds so good and it's free. But now let's talk about the best vocal plugins. And here there's also a free plugin. And why I have a category of just vocal plugins? There are plugins that are meant to be for vocals. Of course you can use it in anything. You can take a vocal plugin, use it in your bass, and maybe it sounds so good, so just use it. But I thought it's good to have like a category only for vocals. When you have vocals, you need to make sure that it sounds perfect, that everything is in key. When the singers are singing, probably they are not perfect in every single note of every single word that they are singing. And for this I have a free plugin for you that is the Graylion 2. Graylion is just an auto-pitch plugin that is gonna control all of this. For example, if your song is in F minor, you just put F minor there, and if in the vocal there are some notes that are not in F minor, so they are out of key, the plugin is just gonna control it, is gonna put it to the right key. So this way you make sure that everything sounds perfect, because there's not a worse thing than a vocal that is off key. And as I said, down below in the description you have the link, you can go and get it. It's free and it's gonna help you so much. Number 2, when you have your vocal in the right tone, in the right key, sometimes you want to add harmonies. No, but Wildcrow, the singer is gonna give you harmonies. Maybe not. Maybe you're using a vocal sample or the singer didn't send you any harmonies, but you want harmonies. So what you can do is use the waves harmony. It's gonna help you so much on this because you can apply a lot of different harmonies. You can control where you want them exactly in the stereo field, like if you want it here, if you want it here. You can control the pitch of every harmony. For example, I want a +3 harmony here, but a -7 here, and a +9 here, and a -2 here, whatever. My advice is that you don't have the harmonies of the whole song, just in some particular parts to make it sound a bit better, a bit fuller, and a bit nicer. When you have your vocal the right tone and you have your harmonies and so, you need to make it sound good, you need to make it sound clean, compressed, and all of that. And here comes the third plugin, that is the Nectar 3. I use this plugin in all my songs to make them sound better, and the way I use it is just clicking on the vocal assistant and playing my vocal. This is gonna analyze my vocal and it's gonna apply an EQ, compression, de-esser, reverb to my vocal. Of course, my advice is after you do this, go one by one in each thing to check if it sounds better or not. Usually the only thing I don't use is the reverb that it applies. Not because it's not good, just because I prefer to use others in buses and this way I control them better and so. Number 4, yeah, the Nectar 3 is compressing, but maybe you want to compress a bit more or you want to use other compressors. So for this, I use usually 2 plugins that are good, and I'm not that technically perfect to know exactly if this plugin is better for vocals or for drums or these kind of things, but I know they are so easy to use. People say it's good for vocals, so I just use it. The first one is the CLA2A. It's so easy to use. Usually you reduce like 3, 5, maybe 7 dBs on a vocal. You just need to touch how much you want to reduce, and then maybe the volume if you want to bring back the volume that you reduced by the compression. Or another plugin that they use is the RVox, that is also super easy to use. You just say how much you want to reduce and nothing else. And last but not least, when you already have your vocal that sounds perfect, clean, and all of that, maybe sometimes you want to apply different effects. And for this, I use the manipulator. Of course, you can use manipulator in anything, in a bass, in a lead, in a percussion, but I usually use it in vocals. And I use it when I want to have like high-pitched vocals, 4-man vocals, maybe I want to use a vocoder or these kind of things. So well, that's it. These are for me the best plugins for this year 2020. 2023 for music producers. As I said, if I didn't mention any plugin that you think should be in this list, down below in the comments, go and comment. And like always, I have to say thank you to all these people here that are my Patreon members that are supporting me a lot every single month. But at the same time, I give them back a lot of things like project of my YouTube videos, monthly sample packs, exclusive soundbank, a lot of help, super detailed feedback, an exclusive Telegram group where I share a lot of tips. And if you want to be a Patreon member, down in the description, you have the link and I'm waiting for you. So nothing else, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support and see you in the next video.